I'm Pete North at Liverpool University, and I've been lucky enough to get some funding from the Economic and Social Research Council to run a project for the last 3 years called Low Carbon Liverpool. You look at our website, lowcarbonliverpool.com, and what we've been doing is working with Liverpool Vision and Liverpool Council and the Liverpool Chamber of Commerce, and we've been wanting to know what does the city need to do to avoid dangerous climate change, while also making sure people have got jobs and the sort of businesses they want to have, thinking about growth in slightly different ways. And one thing that's come across really clearly in this last research is that the last couple of years is that Liverpool's come on so much since, say, 20, 30 years ago when the city was pretty much on its feet. Remember back when the docks changed and Liverpool had its problems. And we saw that with capital culture, 2008, the city rebranding itself as a vibrant place that people want to come and visit. One of the things about capital culture that the judges really noticed was Liverpool's communities. When they came to Liverpool, and the taxi drivers were saying this is a good idea, and communities were saying this was a good idea. It was that vibrancy of Liverpool's communities that really did make the city stand out, and those of us who live here, we know that is very much the story. And because we've got such strong communities, there's loads of stuff going on in the background that people necessarily, if they look at the big picture, don't notice. And Mr. Seel's garden has been fantastic at pulling that out there. I went to the Merseyside Environmental Awards about 6 months ago, and the room in Anfield was chock-a-block full of communities doing really fancy things. Part of the research, I went sustainably. I borrowed a bike from a colleague in Transition Liverpool and got on the ferry and then went by train to Dunkirk, where every few years there is a European Conference of Sustainable Towns and Cities run by Europe. And I heard there about something called the European Green Capital Competition, which I hadn't heard before. Basically, every year, just like capital culture, Europe points to one town or one city and says, this is a city that has got something to tell the rest of Europe about sustainability and about low carbon. The first one was in Stockholm, then it was Hamburg, this year it was Vitoria in Spain, last year Vitoria in Spain, this year it's Nantes in France, Bristol's bid for it. And I was at a meeting and the people from Hamburg were talking about their city. A port that's had major problems, a port with major deindustrialisation, losing a lot of manufacturing, very dirty waterways which needed to be cleaned up, lots of waterside property and buildings that were derelict and needed to be cleaned up. And they won Capital of Culture, they won European Green Capital. And I thought, there's no way that Hamburg is one of the most green cities in the world. No way it is. If you were to think of a green city in Germany, is there any city that springs to mind for any of you? It's a city for me is Freiburg. If you look at Freiburg on the web, you'll see there's local power generation everywhere, loads of local food. It really is the greenest city. Hamburg is not the greenest city. And I thought, well, how did they get that? And I heard about what they said, and I thought, there's more than this going on in Liverpool. But typical Liverpool, we don't talk about it. Typical Liverpool, we don't let people know. We have the story that the national media puts out about Liverpool as a place of problems, not a place where solutions are coming up there. And I thought, hang on, we might be able to have a go at this. So I came back and I sort of spoke to a few people about it, and some people said, oh, don't be ridiculous, how can you possibly talk about Liverpool as the most sustainable city? And no, it's not the most sustainable city. But then think again, think of the River Mersey 20 years ago, dead. And now think of the fish that are in the River Mersey. Think of the way that we've got all this open space in Liverpool that folk like you were talking about. Think of the possibilities of wind power that we're absolutely marshalling at the moment. Look at all the windmills you see up on the coast of Liverpool. Think about the way that the city has turned a corner in the last few years, and what's it going to do? It's going to turn itself into a growth monster, into a completely unsustainable behemoth that is just growth. And we know that there's no future in that. We know if we're going to avoid dangerous climate change, you've got to have a new form of growth that is absolutely sustainable. So perhaps Liverpool's got a chance to get the story right and really set itself up for a sustainable, low-carbon city. 20 years ago, the city could have gone the way Detroit has gone, really a city that's failing. it doesn't need to be here anymore. It's not like that. We've got these fantastic community things going on here. So what about bidding for green capital? The other point about green capital is, if you think about what we've got to do to avoid dangerous climate change, something in the press today from Nicholas Stern, who wrote the Stern Review, he thinks we're on track for 4 degrees heating this century if we keep going away at the moment. You look at the scenarios of the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, and what they think is going to happen. They're really conservative. They only say what governments will allow them to say, and they'll only say what all the scientists agree is the case. And they're really downplaying the absolute mess we're in if we're going to have a planet for our grandchildren. We really are, in a difficult situation. And in Britain we're doing a lot. We've got the Climate Change Act. Liverpool's emissions are going down because of all that deindustrialisation. Fantastic. But we've really got to make sure that, while we're doing things at a community level and at an individual level, we've got to do them at an international level, we've got to do them at a national level, we've got to do them at the city level. So, after a lot of arguments and a lot of work, speaking to some people who say things like, Liverpool's a poor city, we need growth. All that climate change stuff is for the rich cities, crap. If we're going to get Liverpool absolutely right, the sort of city we need, it's going to provide jobs and business for people, it's got to be green. Getting people to understand the responsibility of this city. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Why? Because we invented international global capitalism in this part of the world. So in terms of the responsibility for climate change for the past 2 centuries, we're right at the top of the list, the crap that's been put into the atmosphere. That we didn't know we were doing, it was nobody's fault for the past 2 centuries. So we've got responsibilities in the city to do something about it. And eventually we kept on at it, we kept on at it, we kept on at it. But we managed to persuade the mayor to allow us to put together a partnership, a coalition of the willing, involving the Chamber of Commerce, ARUP, Liverpool University, the Environment Agency, about 15 odd people meeting up sort of very regularly. And what we've done is we've done an audit of where the city is on our climate change policies. What Europe wants you to do is provide data on about 12 areas like water quality, like open space, like biodiversity, like climate change policies, to see whether you can actually, hold a candle as some sort of green city. We're just doing that work at the moment. We've done that audit and we're now working out what it really means. And it looks like we might well have a story to tell. We might well be able to do something like this. So the next stage is to persuade the mayor that, if Liverpool's going to grow, it's got to grow in a green way, and he seems to be listening at the moment. The growth monsters, those that want to do the International Festival of Business, that think this is something that gets in the way of competitiveness, still got to fight battles with them. So the more folk like you sort of saying and doing what you're doing, and saying you think the green capital might be something worth bidding for, will hopefully get us forward. The point about this is it could be a catalyst. It can start to pull things together. You think of changing a city round, it's a huge job. Where do you start? It's like eating an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? Toe by toe. You start off by doing what you can do. The point about this green capital bid is that what the mayor is thinking about, he's asked the Bishop of Liverpool, Bishop James, to chair the meeting, and there's a meeting happening on Monday where they're going to start to get people together. They're going to get the great movement in a room. So if the reason that we can't bid to be green capital is, for example, that we send all our waste to the landfill in Newcastle, and that's just bloody not good enough, we start to say, get that sorted out. This is a way of saying to people that are not doing sustainable things, you're getting in the way of the rest of us, sort it out. And there seems to be some sort of political will to make that happen. Because I think we know that the cities that work are the cities where people are all seeing from the same sum sheet. They all know where they're going. And we seem to be starting to get there. So nobody's saying it's the greenest city. Of course it isn't. Of course it's not the greatest city. But we think we've got 2 unique selling points. We've been to the other green capitals and spoke to them there. And they said, yeah, I think we might well have something there. Not with the greenest city, but look how far we've come. Look, this city's been turning around. We've got a chance to make it a really great place to live in because of all this local food that's going on and all the other things that are going on, and let's celebrate that. So it's look how far we've come. And secondly, what we can say to other cities that are similar to Liverpool. It's not the most green places, it's not the most prosperous places. It might be places like Gdansk or Riga or Marseille or Naples. Cities that have got their problems with industrialisation and all the changes that have happened to the economy in the last 20 years. And here's an example of a city that's grabbed hold of it and done something about it. And the third thing is the communities. That's the extra point. None of the green capitals that have been so far have really got down to community level. So if we could start to recreate that buzz that we got from capital culture, this might be quite exciting. So that's really where we are. I just wanted to sort of say something about that, and Michelle asked me to perhaps say that, you know, when people are working away at local levels, all those local levels together have really got a great story that we can tell in Liverpool, and perhaps we can take it a little bit further. So happy to talk to anybody, my children willing, although the playing on his screen at the moment, so they've both been very good, thank you Polly, thank you very good. But that's roughly what we think we're doing, so happy to talk to any questions about that and, you know, get involved.
I think that's a perfect last speaker for this project. This is the last speaker of this project.